Standing, hello. Uh-oh. It sounds like we're about to have something wonderful now, amen? But good morning. My name is Clarence Bunch. I am actually the A&R program leader with the Prairie Views Corporate Extension Program. And today I'm going to serve as your moderator. As your moderator, of course, I'm going to try to make sure I keep everybody on time and I keep everything moving, perhaps probably as smooth as possible. But on behalf of the dean and the corporate extension program executive administrator, the director of research, and as well as the College of Agriculture and Human Sciences, I welcome you to this morning's first inaugural hemp workshop. This morning, of course, the workshop is designed to really to answer questions possibly. Perhaps maybe for some of you, you might still be a little bit more seeking and searching and finding and more confused. But it's designed this morning to try to reach and talk to the producers who are here, the farmers who are here, our entrepreneurs who are here, our scientists who are here, and those who basically are just curious. Of course, we're trying to this morning to perhaps probably share with you information that can perhaps help you make the next shift in your journey. It was Peter Senge who made this statement. He said, I'm a system thinker, but he said in system thinking, he said it was a discipline of seeing forward. It is a system thing of seeing forward. I am about to try to make sure that we understand that after 2014, when the Farm Bill was passed, and 47 states now who are now eligible to embark on hemp, the industrial hemp, that we are also now begin to provide an educational opportunity to share with you, to help you, to provide a good understanding with you as we move forward in the state of Texas. Am I still in the state of Texas? Okay, I just want to know if I'm still in the state of Texas. But it was because of 2014 that the Farm Bill, 2014 the Farm Bill, it changed. It allowed the states to begin to make legislation so that they can allow research and some growing of hemp to take part in their state to create a program. That happened in 2014. Ironically, after 2014, you have in 2017 that perhaps probably a number of states, 38 states that actually occurred, that decided to say, we want to try to find a way to do this. Of course, not all states move as rapidly as they possibly should have. But it was not until 2018 Farm Bill that the 2018 Farm Bill allowed, when it basically took the regulatory responsibility from the Justice Department and actually moved it over to the Agriculture Department. That's when things began to move. Hello? And all of us know hemp is an old crop, right? But when they moved it over, it no longer became illegal up under the classification of a drug one item. It then became a commodity crop. And this is why everybody's so excited, because when it became a commodity crop, now we can begin to look at how can we grow it and actually use it legally and move forward as people here in the United States. So we're excited about that. I'm happy because Prairie View is taking this bold step forward to provide leadership in this particular direction so we can be an educational arm to the people. So we're not trying to tell you what you can and cannot do. We're just trying to share with you the best way to do it, so that you won't end up like others who probably went out, explored, and was unsuccessful. Because I don't know about you, unsuccessfulness is not good for me, nor my health. How about your health? So we want to take this opportunity today and to take from here information, knowledge, understanding, so we can begin to pioneer out into our new and our own endeavor. But I want you to understand that we're going to follow the plan. You have an agenda. Does everybody have an agenda? Okay. If you don't have one, please raise your hand and she'll bring you one. Because I don't want you saying, well, how come we're not asking questions, or how come he's not stopping? We're going to follow the agenda because your time is important, right? Their time is important. And we want to make sure that we follow the schedule that we basically have. I have for my speakers, I have a secret for my speakers. Somebody say secret. I have a secret for my speakers. My speakers are gonna look to their right, and I have a timekeeper over here. They're gonna show you some. They're gonna show you some cards, and those cards gonna say, start. You got 5 minutes, and they're gonna say stop if you keep going. Now, if you see stop and you don't stop, how many used to watch at the Apollo? I'm gonna come out like the broom. I'm gonna just dust you. We gotta get you all. So we want to continue to move forward so we can make sure we respect everybody's time. So to get started, let me now allow us to receive our welcome from our College of Agriculture, our Dean and Director of Land Grant, Dr. DeZeus, and followed by him is going to be, of course, our Executive Administrator as well as our Director of Research.
Good morning, everybody. So great to see such a large gathering here on this very historic day as we break ground for a brand new crop that is positioned to revolutionize Texas and limited resource producers and give them yet another avenue to increase income. So we as a university are very pleased to be part of this journey of discovery, of outreach, of education. And so in that spirit, I'm very pleased to welcome you to this workshop on behalf of the College of Agriculture and Human Sciences. This makes us a land-grant university by virtue of the fact that we not only have an academic mission, but a research mission and an extension or outreach mission as well. So we are based on campus, but we also have county agents in 35 counties around this state of Texas. So on behalf of some 150 employees of this college, plus 425 students, some of whom are here, I'd like to welcome you all again to the start of this workshop. And very pleased to have Dr. Bunch take the lead in terms of extension and outreach, delivering research-based education to growers and processors and other people interested in this industry. So thanks, Dr. Bunch, and to your team for putting together this workshop. It took a lot of efforts over the past several days and indeed weeks to put together an event of this magnitude. And we're pleased to have many of you here, including the Texas Hemp Harvesters Association that we're pleased to partner with, and other partners. So again, we can't do this alone. We are also learning as we go. We don't have a permit yet, so we look forward to applying for the permit when it becomes available. First week of March, apparently, is the target date for applications to become available. So we've got to line up, like the rest of you, to apply for a permit. But in the meantime, we can share some of the knowledge that we have in this great college. So once again, I'm very pleased to welcome you all, and let's learn together. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Dr. Bunch, again, for organizing this.
Good morning to you all. I'm Alfred Parks. If you have a program, you see my name printed in the program. I represent the research arm of the College of Agriculture and Human Sciences, and I want to bring you greetings, as it says on the program, but I'm excited. This is an exciting time to me. You know, if I'd have been here this time last year, I probably wouldn't have been here this time last year because, you know, hemp is a crop that I've known about probably most of my life, and I was thinking back over maybe 20 years ago, we were talking about hemp as a biofuels product. But now as we've moved into the 21st century and we move forward and we think in terms of the potential, and every day I'm learning new things about hemp and the potential that it offers. You know, I'm an economist, so everything means dollars and cents to me, and I'm saying, okay, when I talk to my researchers, my question is always to them, okay, what's the viability of this crop? And so we're working on that. but I've never seen this much excitement. So I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm excited that you all are here today. I see a lot of questions on most of your face, just like it is on our face, but hopefully, collectively, together, we can form a bond such that we can find answers to these things, and hopefully that we can strategically move forward to make sure that we don't make a lot of mistakes like some of the other states. We've learned a lot of lessons already as we've traveled around the country and gone to various workshops. So one advantage, I guess, of being one of the last ones to come on board is we can learn from the mistakes of others. And that's part of what we're here today, to try to get some of those questions out such that we can answer some questions such that we don't go out blinded and do some things that might cause us a lot of headaches and of course, cost us a lot of money. So welcome here today. Hope this is going to be a beneficial workshop for you today, and we look forward to collaborating with you in the days and weeks and years to come. Thank you.
Good morning, and welcome to the Hill. How many of y'all know you're at the Hill? I'm Carolyn Williams, an alum of this amazing college and this great university, and I represent the outreach arm of the university, the Cooperative Extension Program. You know, we are in 35 of the 254 counties in Texas. We do family and community health, we do community and economic development, we do 4-H youth development, and agriculture and natural resources. And it is truly an honor to be a part of such a great group of entrepreneurs. I was looking at the words the letters HEMP, and wondering, okay, how can I encourage you all this morning? We know knowledge is power, and that's why you're here today. We know that partnerships and collaboration makes the difference. It makes us profitable. It gives us more knowledge and more power. So I'm encouraging you to glean all you can today. We're excited about you as new partners with us. We're also excited about this relationship with our own research colleagues and extension, because when you look at the tripart mission, the research does their thing, and then research extension takes that information and takes it to the people in the community for them to use, adopt, and practice. So I encourage you to learn, get to know new people, and also I'm going to use my ending statement as Hemp is helping entrepreneurs make profits.
Thank you, Dr. Williams, Dean, and Dr. Parks. We're going to have next on the agenda where we're going to have Hannah Wilner, who is with the Texas Hemp Harvest Association. I'm pausing because I was thinking that is Dr. Henry and Dr. Aruna in here? Can you all stand up? Dr. Henry and Dr. Aruna are the ones who really are part of the committee who helped organize this. And so if you all can give them a hand clap, because they did a great job doing so. And of course, Hannah, who is coming up now, as I'm speaking, let me give you all a tip. When I'm talking and calling names, folks are starting to walk at the same time. So glad to have you here.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Oh, very good. First off, I'd like to say thank you to Prairie View Extension for putting this on, and the College of Agriculture. It is essential to provide education, accurate education to our community members. This is a crop that we haven't had access to for a long time, and so both the research is critical, but also building our supply chain and building our regional communities is going to be very important in this. So I'll begin. There's two parts to this presentation. The first is an introduction into where hemp is, and so we start with looking at the future of what the capabilities are in Texas. and then we'll stop and I'll bring my team up here because we would like to go over the rules and regulations. So we will stand in place of Texas Department of Agriculture this morning and kind of giving you an overview about the two regulatory agencies that are providing licenses and what that looks like, what we know so far until the rules are adopted. But again, we'll start with just kind of the beginning of, where we are. So let me load this up. Where's my IT guy? Dr. Bunch, where's our IT guy? See if they can help. He's coming down. All right, so an early morning this morning, I'm sure for a lot of you.
There he is.
All right, I can start before we've got the presentation up. My name is Hannah Wilner. I am one of the founders and the current executive director for Texas Hemp Harvesters Association. It's a challenging name. I don't blame it if you can't remember it, but think TXHHA. We want to be the home of hemp in Texas, and we're here to talk to you about the business of hemp. You'll have a lot of exposure throughout the state in different regions where we've got companies coming in and explaining extraction processing and cultivation methodologies and providing seeds and access to things. And what the association is really here for is three primary purposes. The first is to educate everyone on compliance. This is across the board. As I mentioned earlier, there are two regulatory agencies that will be overseeing licenses for this crop. And the second is to build supply chains. I'll go into this in the presentation in a moment, but essentially, Texas does not have any of the infrastructure required to bring even one product to market in our current state. There's a lot of growth that's needed, and we're looking at this as our long-term play. And the third is to build the industrial market so large-scale agriculture, commercial agriculture production can be realized in this state where we do ag well. Let me see. There's a chance. No. I think I still need that gentleman. Okay, well, we're going to figure this out. It's not moving there. It's just moving on the computer. What do I do? It's not moving. Technical difficulty. So it moves on this computer, but not that one. Wonderful. All right, so for years, people have envisioned a utopian society if legalization of cannabis were realized. There's many people who believe that hemp can solve all of the world's problems. Things like global warming, CO2 reduction, renewable energy, plastics, toxic soil, all of it. Now, personally, I'm not so sure that hemp can solve all of the world's problems, but we are confident that hemp production in Texas can be a shot of economic stimulation within this state. Industrial hemp produces everything from batteries, car parts, construction materials, bioplastics, etc. Now that hemp is legal across all the states, we have an opportunity to take advantage of what's in front of us. And we're ready to begin. But it takes you and your support and your involvement to create any of the future that we're going to talk about. Texas is uniquely poised to roll in a new era of economically viable and sustainable products, just based on some of the building blocks that we already have in the state. So we're going to start with those building blocks, and we'll discuss them in some detail, but we're always here for your questions and answers. The association is here, again, to build this community, to build our supply chain. So please know that this is just an overview, and there's a lot more to come, and the path isn't paved for us. We are in wagons on grass right now, and you all in this audience are a part of that. So there are no answers. Remember, we are all moving forward in the same path. So you've come to hear about industrial hemp in Texas, and what I'm here to tell you about is what we see, what we envision as the future of hemp in Texas, because we have to start today with very little foundation in order to get to a place of true productivity. So we welcome you to join us on this journey, and we hope that our vision inspires you to get involved today. So there's a piece of this presentation that does require your involvement. Is everybody okay with that? A little bit. Okay, so first I'd like to know who came the farthest to attend this. Is anybody here that had to travel for longer than 2 hours? How about 3 hours? We have some dedicated people. Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for taking the time in the morning to wake up early and show up, and we hope that this is valuable. Now, next question. Can you name the top 2 adjectives that describe Texas? Big. Red? Independent, absolutely. Good. How about big and strong? Does that resonate? Big and strong. We are a big and we are a strong state. Big and strong also describes the hemp plant, which is known for having the strongest and longest plant fiber known in the world. The products that come out of the industrial hemp can provide composite materials, which work for everything from brake pads to skateboards to the drones for our military. So we talked about these building blocks. The first building block that we have is agriculture. And I believe that most of you are here to provide some input into this agricultural community. Texas knows large-scale ag production. We understand the supply chain and how things need to move through this state in order to get to a final product. But agriculture is what we do, and we already do it on a large scale. The second building block that Texas has is our industries that are already established in Texas, that are already invested in the community and the network that we have here. Now, the industries that we're primarily focused on that benefit the most from industrial hemp are the oil and gas industry, manufacturing, and food and beverage. We'll go into these in a moment. Now, the last building block, and the reason that you're here is because we have the most excellent higher education institutes in the U.S., easily landing 3 in the top 20. Prairie View A&M boasts multiple programs that support farmers and community alike. We'll talk about those in a moment. But primarily, we've got food security, a wonderful medicinal specialty crop program, livestock efficiency for limited resource producers, and they've got an international goat program. We'll talk about that in a minute. All this is going to tie together, but you'll understand that we rely on our higher education institutes to help us in building this path to the future. We need them as much as they need us. So thank you for providing this opportunity for everybody here and for us to present. So in order to get to the future of hemp in Texas, we have to talk about the future state, or the current state. So our current state really has these three three statuses that we need to be aware of. And all this is just recognizing it. So the first is experience. Starting in 2014, certain states adopted a program that interacted with their research programs. So states have years of experience. Granted, it's only a few years, but this is still years of experience with this crop that includes research, involving higher education institutes, and also having funding, revenue, or appropriations that support their state program. Again, Texas has none of this. The next is that the marketplace is heavily weighted towards the health and wellness industry. Right now, CBD products make up 80% of the current market share. We haven't yet tapped into the industrial applications, which require a market. But the industry is heavily weighted towards the health and wellness. Now, health and wellness looks like supplements, skincare, cosmetics. And I would like to take this moment to ensure that everyone in the audience understands the importance of cannabinoid education and research. Every mammal has an endocannabinoid system that runs through our body similar to the nervous system. It is in every tissue of our being, our skin, our heart, our brain, our eyes, you understand. And the hemp flower, the flower piece of this crop, has over 140 known cannabinoids. And we are just beginning to understand both the endocannabinoid system and the cannabinoids that come off our hemp plant and how it interacts with us. So the importance of the medical and the health and wellness industry is vital. And industrial hemp also has that composite capability, the fiber capability to introduce into multiple other industries, not just the health and wellness. And the last thing is that other states, because of their experience with this, have a supply chain. That supply chain is absent in this state. We'll talk about it in a moment, but we have no baseline to understand what the best cultivars are, where our best growing regions are, or who those relationships and what the handoffs look like. So in case you haven't had an opportunity, TDA and Commissioner Miller put out a video recently, and in it he clearly states how Texas farmers should approach this crop. The first is to ensure that you have a buyer and a contract before you plant. We in Texas do not have the advantage of people swooping in to scoop up our crops. We talked about that, about the marketplace being heavily weighted towards the health and wellness industry. In 2019, they saw saturated markets that were rife with production issues, bad contracts, and opaque supply chains. The second thing that Commissioner Miller talks about is beware of fraud. In banking, they call this know your client, but it is essential to engage reputable businesses to do business with. How do you make sure that you stay away from fraud? Do your homework. Check references on both people and companies. This is within your capability and within the network that we have here and that we are building in our own supply chain to understand who the right players are going to be and what that looks like. And Texas Hemp Harvesters is here to support understanding what responsible contracts look like, what your points of negotiation should be. The third point that Commissioner Miller makes is that growing. Again, we have growing and cultivation concerns. We have no idea what the baseline is in Texas. And that's where Prairie View and the other institutions step in and they help us to understand on a statewide scale. People came from all over Texas to hear this, which means that you represent different growing cycles, different soil amendments, everything. And the last is more of a fact, and that is hemp is susceptible to pest and disease. There will be people who talk about it is the cure for all things. It absolutely has production issues. There is, and not to mention our stringent requirements to fit within this very low THC threshold. Okay, because we haven't produced this crop in this state, we don't know what it's going to do. And this crop is highly susceptible to environmental conditions. And we all know in Texas, we have a lot of environmental conditions that are out of our control. So how can we get Texas to be the biggest and the best in the state? How can we create Texas to be the market leader? There are three ways. The first is that we need to target the strains and cultivars that produce the best fiber, seeds, and cellulose. You're not seeing health and wellness up here. There is a space for that. But again, what Texas has a capability of with large-scale outdoor commercial agriculture is to produce this, which feeds into our industries that will eventually need this product. The second is to engage the large corporations who not only can support our industry in developing it, but put money into our research programs that will develop new products that are economically viable and sustainable, changing the way and the resources that we have to do business in this state and giving an alternative to the crop farmers that are here. And the last, and what we believe is the most important, is to partner with your local institutions. Partner with our higher education institutes who, again, have programs already in place and are finding ways to implement industrial hemp in to learn about how this crop can be utilized the most efficient way. This is how we get to the future in Texas. And this is what you are here to build starting today. Now, what's the one thing that hinders building a new market or getting into something? Anybody? Money. It's money. Now, we can find money in 3 areas. The easiest are government investment, corporate investment, and private investment. Now, government investment is what currently happens with cotton, right? Farmers are subsidized by the federal government because the price to cultivate cotton is greater than what they would make on it, yet it's essential for our economy. Another example of government investment was the New Deal that helped the United States out of the Great Depression. Now, I know that there's probably nobody here that can remember that in detail, but essentially the government provides support and infrastructure for people, which looks like jobs, loans, grants, or tax incentives to encourage private and personal investment back into this government, or back into our economy and our state. Creating the future applications involves both government and corporate, or our industries. A government contract for this could look like the Department of Energy putting out a contract for biomass, which we found has recently happened. Or the Department of Defense putting out a contract for fiber, the strongest fiber that can be woven into a new breathable and sustainable Kevlar product that goes not just for all of our enforcement, but also potentially for the drones that we talked about earlier. These products can easily be generated here in Texas with our industry and our capability and our farmers that are able to produce this type of crop. So just in case anyone in the audience has access to a large corporation that has money for R&D and is interested in developing a new economic and or sustainable product, we're looking for companies like Unilever, who has made a commitment that in 5 years, they will have 100% of plastic packaging either reusable, recyclable, or compostable. If you work or have access to oil and gas, manufacturing, or food and beverage in this state, please start to engage them. We can help them understand what the capabilities are with this crop. Now, what are our barriers? Research, regulations, and supply chain. Remember, it wasn't until 2018, barely 2 years ago, that hemp was considered more dangerous than heroin. We have had this crop has been off limits to research for over 80 years. It is funny and it is laughable, and this is our current state. So the biggest barrier that we have is research. We talked about our endocannabinoid system. Like I said, we know a sliver of what this system does in our body and how we can support it and interact with it. And we haven't begun to do the industrial side. The next is regulations. So let's look at how regulations affect agronomy. Does anybody here know what the 3 approved hemp food products are? Whole hemp seed, hemp protein powder, and hemp oil. One thing that is strangely left off this that happens when you press the seed for oil is there is a hemp meal or a hemp cake that comes out at the end. Now, this hemp cake is high in protein. It's high in fiber, and it has a lot of vitamins and minerals like vitamin E, potassium, sodium, you name it, zinc, iron. Now, think for a moment if we could have farmers with a large ranch and animals, even goats, cattle, etc., that they could grow a couple acres of hemp, press the seed for oil, and take that byproduct to feed their animals a more healthy and nutritious option than corn, which is high in carbs and fiber but has very small nutritional content. Again, because of regulations, this food alternative, this ingredient that we could give to our animals even, hasn't been approved. So as an association, we are partnering with Prairie View A&M and other groups, such as the Hemp Feed Coalition, which is a nonprofit based out of Kentucky. Now, they are focused solely on the regulatory and legal approval of hemp as animal feed. We have this opportunity to listen to them and find out about the mistakes from other states and how we can implement them here. And what they encourage is regional research and development programs where we can partner farmers with professors, with livestock, and start to feed into these studies that are already happening in other states that feed into the federal government approving hemp meal as an alternative ingredient to feed our animals. Somebody said the other day at a conference that you can turn a regular steer into Kobe by feeding them hemp. See, I told you, hemp can solve all the world's problems. Oops. Now let's talk about the last point, and that is the supply chain. Now I mentioned a little earlier, this is the reason that Texas Hemp Harvesters was formed. Andrea, Preston, and I spoke long ago about this coming to Texas, this crop coming to Texas, and knowing, like I said, that there is no product that can be brought to market because we don't have a baseline in this state. We have to have the supply chain. Now, on our website, we have a supply chain document. We didn't have a chance to print it out. We weren't sure how many people were gonna be here, but reach out to us and we'll get this to you. And it shows you what the next steps are. So if you're a grower, you have to have a place to dry this crop. That's really the next step. There's got to be testing involved, and we have the regulations that talk about who is an appropriate testing facility. But understanding the supply chain and where the crop is being grown, where it's moving to, we know that in Oklahoma, essentially, which handed out abundant licenses in the last few years, they have a processing facility in almost every county. Remember, we have no processing facilities in Texas, which is how many times the size of Oklahoma? We have a lot of work to do. Just keep this in mind. And again, it takes you. It takes you understanding, where do I want to start in this industry? Who are the people in my community that are also interested in doing this? We have to build this together. Our supply chain starts here with you. We talked about the target industries. I want to go through one more time some applications, again, in case you have access to them or in case they're in your area. For oil and gas, we know that solvents, sealants, and soil remediation can be an immediate impact. These are studies that we can quickly go through, that the oil and gas companies are more than capable of providing funding to do the research that will produce new soils and sealants that will help their production. And again, we're feeding back into things like carbon credits and supporting their entire organization and how it's run based on providing an alternative that is sustainable, that is grown from a plant rather than a petroleum-based substance. Manufacturing. We have a lot of manufacturing in the States, and one of the beautiful things about this crop is that it inevitably repurposes and revitalizes manufacturing facilities. This is already happening. You have groups like Elemental that's supposed to be coming into Houston with a large CO2 extraction facility. They purchase an old coffee grinder. You've got a group that's going into Lubbock with a large decortication facility. They're reusing existing property or existing equipment. This is possible. And I'm encouraging the entrepreneurs in the group to start thinking about areas and buildings in your region, in your county, that could be repurposed to support this supply chain. Again, it takes all of us. It takes you in your area knowing what resources you have available. And finally, food and beverage. We talked about the animal aspect, but there are 3 ingredients that we have access to that we can start incorporating and doing research to find out how can we ingest this protein. Right now, that the hemp protein is really heavy. It doesn't blend well, right? I think that's just a matter of time before some brilliant scientist that's part of one of these institutions comes up with the right solution. So it's airy and fluffy and acts like egg whites or something. You know, I mean, we've got so many opportunities with this. And then this is the old slide. But ultimately, food and beverage can solve our global hunger crisis. This is a plant that grows in almost any condition, and the seeds that are produced have some of the highest in protein and nutritional value. Once we start making this capable and legal and regulatorily available, we have an opportunity to export this all around the globe, and even export seeds so they can grow it and process it themselves. And again, stop global hunger. Now, this is what the supply chain looks like. I said we've got a document that we can give you. It's a lot easier. Don't worry about taking a snapshot. But I wanted to point out where we are. So this is cultivation. This is putting the plant in the ground. From here, you need inspection and testing. Once you harvest it, you have to have it tested. A COA is a certificate of authenticity. Okay, that means that the crop that you have has been certified as authentically hemp and not marijuana. Then we've got to cut it down, harvest it, machine with hands, and transport it to a drying facility. We have to dry it from 80% humidity down to about 10%. This can happen in a number of ways. Again, the entrepreneurs in the room and everybody, there are multiple ways to handle this crop. It's not just one way. So in your region, you will find what best works for you. Maybe somebody has an old peanut dryer that we want to figure out how to repurpose, right? I mean, there's so many options that we have already because of our agricultural background. We need to test it after it's dried to make sure that it's still in compliance. Then we go to a processing and extraction facility. Now this identifies our health and wellness. Right? What happens with it? We turn it into crude, isolate, raw flour. We also have different manufacturing facilities for the industrial hemp portion, for the fiber side and the seed sides. And that can go into construction materials, industrial applications, topicals, and ingestibles. What we encourage is that Texas can learn from the mistakes of other states. We can incorporate lessons learned to fast track ourselves to that market leader position. Is it going to happen in 2020? No. Is it going to happen by 2025? Absolutely. Can I get a yes? Yes. So you're here as the beginning of your engagement in this, the beginning of the supply chain in your area, and the beginning of the future of hemp in Texas to bring in a new economically viable and sustainable future. Represent, be the kind of leader that you would want to follow. Be the community leader that says, we want this in our area, and you're willing to step up. We as the association and we as Prairie View A&M need to see who's going to step up and build these regional supply chains. So we, again, invite you to join us, to participate, to ask questions, to get inquisitive, and to figure out how we're going to build this in Texas. All right? Thank you. All right. We can do a Q&A.
Give her another hand clap. And since she's done on time, I love you for your timekeeping. You all can ask a question or two, since we still have a little time. Go ahead, young man.
That's a great question. So his question was, if we understand what the lessons learned from other states, how can we identify that? Well, we'll take that on as the association to produce a document and or a video to get that out. But essentially, if you guys have notes and you're taking notes, it's pretty, and I might miss some, but it's pretty easy, right? The first is have responsible contracts and responsible supply chains. That is what's lacking in other states. This is, people have rushed into the green rush and planted and thought, oh, I'm gonna make $1 million on this. I'm gonna make $100,000 on this. But if there's no buyers, and you don't have a contract, and oh, by the way, in Texas, you've never grown this before, we're gonna have a hard time. So the first thing is to have responsible contracts and responsible buyers. People, again, we don't have the market in Texas. What we believe as the association is that the market in Texas is gonna come from the industrial side. Of course, health and wellness will be here, and we will participate in that and support it, but the true capabilities that Texas has with our large-scale agriculture is that. So the first is that. The second is going to be the cultivation issues, right? And understanding within our state, where are we growing the different fibers for? Where are we growing the different cultivars, and where do they do best? This is a weed, but it is a little temperamental, and especially because under our government regulations, we have a very small window of production of one molecule, and that is THC. And so we have to stay underneath this 0.3%. Regardless if that changes, this first year, we're at a disadvantage because it is hard to produce this crop within those confines of these current regulations. That's a great question. So actually it was defined, they have a language in the regulations from USDA that Texas Department of Agriculture also adopted, and that states that the 0.3% is basically an aggregate. So when you do the testing, there's some variation from the laboratory, and so what they'll have is a range. And if within that range, you can hit 0.3%, then it's acceptable. But if that range falls outside of the 0.3%, then it's not. And there's specific language and examples that will help with that. Is that his hand up? I'll come right back. The what? Oh, I'll explain this in a minute. We'll come right back there. This is the regulations. This is trying to understand how we can explain it to everybody in a usable format. Go ahead, we'll be right back.
I think you touched upon the key point that I think from the regs that are being adopted about that 3%. The concern I have with the regs is that there is no alternative action or course if you go over 3% and you just produce a $200,000 crop. What's the alternative to destroying it outside of what may happen to it? This is the problem I think the state has right now in terms of the regulatory that's been, the oversight that's been adopted. So you have everybody here, and you just stated in your comments that that range is the problem that we have as a state. And so I'm wondering what is taking place from the legislative body on trying to figure out the language that they're going to use, because if you got eight farmers or ranchers in here that invest, and all of a sudden 7 of them tip over that 3%. Well, that's millions of dollars that's being destroyed, and the state has not adopted anything to adjust for that for the folks that's looking at getting into this business. So that is the concern that I think the state has to address before we rush into this entire process, because if you look at the other states, it's very easy to go over that 3%. Based on any type of seed that you're using, because it comes from the adaptation of the soil in which you're growing it in.
Your environment.
So this is a problem when you're looking at capital, because in your comments you said, what is the problem? Money. So folks are recognizing that from a state that has that language in right now, raising capital to put into that crop with a very good possibility that it can exceed that 3%. That's problematic for the state. But
it's 0.3%, and I would like to clarify,
Right.
the state is only mirroring the federal regulations. So Texas has been very clear from the beginning. Part of the reason that we did not adopt the 2014 Farm Bill was because hemp was still more dangerous than heroin. It was still listed on that scheduled substance list. And Texas is very clear about being a conservative red state that we want to follow federal rules. So the USDA is the one who has identified that 0.3%. And if you guys wouldn't mind for just 1 second, I'd like to bring my other board members up here because it takes a village to make this happen. So Preston Gardner, Andrea Salas, we'll give a quick introduction just so you guys, yes, thank you, welcome them up. But we have a wealth of knowledge between us, so.
Welcome, welcome. This is a long time coming to be here on the campus of Prairie View, especially in HBCU, and knowing what the Farm Bill actually outlined inside of some of the research. And so we're so excited to be here to support you in that and the farmers.
Yes, thank you. So thank you, Andrea. I'm very proud to be here with all of you. It's an honor. I'm a research analyst for a fund that invests in the publicly traded side as well as a commodity trading platform. It's based out of San Diego and La Jolla, California. I was born and raised here. My father's family is here. Mother's family are farmers from up north. But I feel privileged to be a part of this industry for the past 5 years. I'll be going into more of it later on this afternoon, but to kind of add on to what Hannah has been talking about and what you were discussing, essentially we're going to be bringing in material from outside the state, but whatever material is cultivated here, if we can't account for it, well, then we need to establish relationships outside of this state in some capacity in order to establish these offtake agreements. So this is why it's so important to understand what these educational partnerships, these research and development initiatives look like, because what we're advocating for, first off, you got to do your due diligence. Wherever you're obtaining your original, your foundational genetics, okay, you have to understand where is it coming from. If it's coming from other states, let's say neighboring states, all the way up into, let's say, the Northwest, or if you're obtaining genetics from, let's say, other states like Kentucky, Tennessee, and then, of course, Colorado, Oregon, we have to do our due diligence. We have to understand where did these genetics come from. If we're going to be dealing primarily with the fibrous material, hopefully we can get a number of COAs, but really what we're advocating for is the next generation of these certificates of analysis or certificates of authenticity. Because with the fibrous material, we're testing it for tensile strength and yield point, okay? So we're trying to avoid stripping away a lot of that cellulose so we can preserve the strength of the fibrous material. So, this is something we're going to be discussing further, but establishing the supply channels by doing your due diligence, understanding where you're obtaining your genetics from, and then, obviously establishing those contracts, and then understanding what the future of those relationships is going to be, knowing that we have to first find out what can be grown here in the various agricultural regions of Texas, and how is that going to produce consumable intellectual property. Okay, obviously, whoever's going to be partnering with us and funding these operations, they're going to want to have some sort of intellectual property creation or some way to essentially sell the product and make money into perpetuity. Okay, the idea is that we're forming long-term relationships. So again, we're going to be talking about this later on, so it's a privilege to be here. So thank you very much. Sure. So 0.3% was more of an arbitrary number that was established. It's extraordinarily difficult to maintain a percent or a potency. If we're talking about the biomass and we're talking about cannabidiol, CBD, if you're over 10% CBD, it is very, very difficult to maintain lower than 0.3% for our contract. So I'm also an attorney, so I've structured certain supply chains, multi-state operators, certain components of an small international supply chain. We can talk about that, but it's about understanding the transportation of the material and the degradation of the material with the application of heat, time, and pressure. Then you're going to bring up those THC levels, okay? And not only that, kind of building on what Hannah was discussing, this equation has to do with the acidotic compound of THC to come up with whole THC amounts. And there's a discount of that. Usually it's 0.87 of the acidotic. So it's delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinolic acid, okay? So with the application of heat, time and pressure, that acidotic compound is released. But we still have to take into consideration the THCA and the THC in order to arrive at total THC content. With our contracts, what we've advised, you got to be under 0.2% if you're going to be transporting this material over about 300 miles or, you know, a couple of states. So we'll be going into that.
Let me get a question in before you close. What is the size of the hemp market worldwide, United States, or what have you? So, because in 1990, somewhere around there, that was this craze where everybody was trying to raise Indians and no market for them. They started crashing.
Preston, I'm going to hand this to you. We are going to answer that. I'm going to hand it to Preston to answer. To answer your question, there is nothing that we can do right now. What we can do right now is take the regulations that we have and start somewhere, knowing that this is a risk. We want everybody in this audience to know that this first year, you will absolutely have a high risk of losing a crop due to it being hot. We have no idea what we're dealing with here. So please enter judiciously. Just understand that it's good to walk into this and start, because without starting, we can't get anywhere, right? An acre? 1 acre.
An acre is a
1
test
acre to
crop.
3 acres is very responsible. And what we're encouraging is that what we're encouraging is that acre maybe balance something with CBD, so something that's got more flowers, and a more industrial, tall, skinny crop that has a lot of seeds and colas at the top, okay?
Many things that are going to be flushed out as we begin to roll out the rules is what is going to be compliant versus non-compliant. That language inside of how to remediate the problem of it going hot is in discussion, and hopefully we're looking to have some answers to that in the next coming weeks as they roll it out.
That's the language that I'm concerned with. With any other commodity crop, you got alternatives. Here, in this state, what they'll put down is that if it tests above, it's almost like testing for marijuana, because you got a completely destroyed crop. It's hard to raise capital if you don't have an alternative to do with the crop. So it's almost like you kill them on the front, you'll kill them on the back with that language.
Yes, and to add on to that, there are remediation, but establishing those relationships outside with states that are more THC friendly, let's say with educational partnerships, then there could be interstate trade agreements that are established to lawfully transfer, but we don't know if that's going to be. We don't know. Yeah, yeah. Right, exactly, in many states. Well, but here again, we're starting to see what the evolution of this program is going to look like. So we don't know. There are some states that are dealing with it where they just flat destroy it, but we're hoping that there's going to be some sort of easement to that, because obviously the volatility, absent understanding the fair market value of this product and the establishment of physical trading exchanges, then there, of course, is no futures forwards market, and then the Commodity Credit Corporation that provides these subsidies, it's going to be very difficult for them to participate. So, yes. Yeah. Oh, sure, please. Okay, so the overall, let's say the total cultivable, or let's say licensed acres across the country last year was about 500,000 acres. Okay, so how much of that was planted? Let's say 60 to 70% of that. How much of that was harvested? Let's just say, rule of thumb, it was around 125 to 150,000 acres that were cultivated and harvested and available for sale. So what we're advocating here with Texas Hemp Harvesters Association, no acre left unaccounted for. There was a lot of product that was destroyed. There was a lot of product that wasn't sold. The institutional wholesale market, as estimated by Hemp Benchmark. So the fund that I work for has a strategic position in New Leaf Data Services, which own Cannabis Benchmarks and owns Hemp Benchmarks. This is a transparent price reporting system. So we're advocating for some sort of guidance in terms of what is the overall market share, and then from an accounting perspective, what is the fair market value of this product, so we can understand what these into perpetuity arrangements are going to look like. So So the overall, the country's market, then you want to talk about the world market, then you look at countries like China, but they're mostly producing, let's say, at least 400,000 acres of hemp tow waste, okay? So those, it's really our two countries, and it's much less quality in terms of the fibrous material.
Well, one thing that we have identified is about 9 segments of the industry that we really want to hear from you, and where you're going to participate, from research and innovation to the industrial to seed processing, construction applications, and so on. And so we do want to visit with you as we are answer some additional questions here. But also, we are going to be concentrating on the regions. And so as you connect with us, we will identify the regions as from our east, from Tyler, northwest from the Lubbock area, west El Paso, the Gulf, the Beaumont area, and San Antonio being our southern, our south central area. So we really want to know where you are and how you plan on entering the market so that we can begin in those regions what that supply chain would look like. What was the next question?
Based on your research experience, are there any strain of hemp on the market that is considered to have a lower THC?
Sure. You're going to hear about, yeah, exactly. You're going to hear about various cultivars where people are going to say that it's been stripped out completely, genetically modified, things of that nature. Again, we have to do our due diligence. Ideally, we need to see, let's say, historical certificates of analysis or authenticity. But even at that point, it's really difficult because some labs, of course, there's been tamperings with these COAs, and it's all about establishing trust. So that's why we go back to what Hannah and Andrea have been saying, is establishing relationships with certain types of participants in this industry, experienced individuals who not only have experience cultivating hemp, but also just, on the one hand, large-scale commercial agriculture, but on the other hand, what we're advocating is actually small batch, is really understanding what these test plots are going to look like and what they're going to yield.
And we also want to clarify that if you are growing industrial hemp that is tall and skinny and has a lot of seeds at the top, you are much less likely to even come against that 0.3%. The flowers themselves, the colas and the flowers, are what have the cannabidiols. These have the CBD and the THC and all those acronyms that are real hard to say. Okay, but if you're growing for industrial hemp, the tall, skinny kind that has a lot of seeds at the top, you're not going to have flowers and you're not going to have this issue. So again, one of the reasons that Texas should be focusing on the industrial side.
And then one final thing before we answer your question, we're also going to be talking about minor cannabinoids, or what we call exotic cannabinoids. Another thing that has been happening in this industry, especially over last year, is cannabigerol, CBG, okay? However, these outside participants outside the state of Texas are going to try and sell us seeds or foundational material, whether it be transplants, clones, etc. If they are trying to sell you some of these minor cannabinoids and they show you these COAs where they show a high level of CBG, let's say anything over 1 to 2%, and then it's a non-detect on cannabidiol or CBD or THC, then we know that these samples have probably been taken right when it flowered. In other words, it's not at the appropriate time when the plant has matured. Not only that, CBG seeds relative to the industrial seeds are in many cases 5 times the cost, and yet it will yield most of the time the same plant as what industrial seeds are. Be very, very careful what you are buying and what somebody's telling you that they're buying, and that's why we have to do our due diligence. Ideally, we have to go out to these farms, we have to see what they've grown, what they are growing currently, who they've done business with, and we have to test it ourselves.
I think we have time for one more.
Go ahead. Yeah, right here.
This is a great question. Do you want to talk about this in cross-pollination?
Well, we can talk about the male varietal is a fibrous, softer fiber that it produces. It has not been outlined whether or not you're going to have a difference between male and female in your growing practices. But if you're looking for more fibrous material, then yes, it is known that the male plant can produce a form of fiber. The material weight and the structure of the tensile strength is just slightly different from what the female plant produces. And we can get into that later, but there's no variation of whether or not you can do a male or female when it comes to fiber technologies.
And this brings up a really good point. So again, part of the association is here to educate you because we don't have experience with this crop in Texas. The flowering plant is highly susceptible to the pollen that comes off of the tall industrial hemp plant, which means that if you're interested in growing for what we call medicinal and or consumable use, we are encouraging you to have a controlled environment because industrial hemp is going to be all over Texas and the pollen is going to fly through the air. If you want to produce a crop on the medicinal or the consumable side, make sure that you can control the environment and keep that pollen out. It is unrealistic to think in a state as large as Texas that we're going to have some agreement between farmers that says, okay, I'm gonna grow the flower on my plot and you can't grow yours until you're 5 miles away. You guys know that it's not a realistic expectation for our state. So again, we wanna educate you when you're doing this, no, if you're growing a flower plant and it's out in the open, you will probably have a lot of seeds, which degrades the amount of oil that comes out of that. Sorry. Okay. Yes, you've had the question for a while. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jerome Shinnerett. I'm the president and CEO of Green Life Consultant LLC. We're a full-service cannabis business consulting agency, and we always come to these types of events because we have been diligently focusing on a space that is vital to all of this, risk management. There is currently no multi-peril risk policies for hemp. So the first thing that we have to do is step from the hype and look at the sustainability of the industry. We have to, in our educating our people, we have to get them to understand that this is a business, first and foremost. In order to have sustainability, we have to have the right business models with SOPs and the right recall plans, the right infrastructure. Because just as you said earlier, it's a crop. We have experience with crops, but the business models that the industry is missing. So what we have to also do is always be mindful of risk management. What's the point of building a successful hemp business and it's taken because of a mishap or a natural disaster? So I think what I would like to do is at a later time, find out how we can partner with you all, because we have been in the state of Oklahoma, Texas, and this weekend we moved into Louisiana. We're trying to be that space to demystify all of this. Because what people don't understand is that this is an illegal industry becoming legal. So all of the scams and all of the underground stuff that was, illegal is gonna come to the forefront. And if you're not properly prepared to deal with those risks and mitigate it, it doesn't matter how much land you have, how high the THC levels are. So I think we have to start engaging the conversation and talk more about sustainability from a business perspective.
We'll be discussing
And we'll
that
be,
this afternoon.
yeah, Preston will be discussing that, but one thing that is important to us is as we are coming into community with one another in this plan and how we grow it, being complying and having these standard operating procedures, knowing what good manufacturing processes are ahead of time, knowing what your operation will sustain and be compliant for our state so that we can grow it in the following years, as Hannah has mentioned. We are on board with you on that. We are talking the same language on how to be compliant first and having your operations having standard operating procedures.
Exactly, absolutely. So what he's talking about, you're talking about risk management from a supply chain management and quality management perspective. Okay, so we'll be discussing that this afternoon. So it is obviously very, very important within those contexts. All right, and yes, please.
$44 a pound for the hemp that you grow. Okay, now is that dry or is that wet?
Right. It could depend on a number of, so if you're talking about cultivated, if they're going to, let's say, dry field Reddit, most likely what he's talking about is after all of that. So if we're talking about within the supply chain, usually you're testing along four routes. Really what you're talking about is post-harvest dry and curing, and then they're sending it along to either a decorticator, advanced processor, or if you're going extraction, distillation, and isolation. So most likely that per pound rate is right after the harvest dry cure, and that's when it's transferred. And yeah, exactly, we will.
I would just love to take a few minutes to make sure that everybody here understands how Texas rules are where we currently are. So the USDA has approved the Texas State Plan, which was based on the draft rules from TDA and DSHS. So TDA submitted our rules, right, these draft. The USDA has approved them. The next step is that TDA needs to adopt these rules into law, which then begins enforcement of this program. You have two regulatory agencies depending on which side or which aspects you're going to be involved in with industrial hemp. So Texas Department of Agriculture is primarily focused on cultivation, and they have a hemp grower's license. It is one. The second is Department of State Health Services, which is responsible for all consumable products. That is the processing, the manufacturing, and the retail sale of consumable products. Non-consumable products, all this industrial stuff we're talking about, will still fall under TDA. But if you're interested in the health and wellness side, or you're interested in topicals, or you're interested in anything that is ingested as a consumable product, on the CBD side, you'll be dealing with the Department of State Health Services. And again, they have one license for that with a few registrations. It's going to be the same with TDA. One license, but certain facilities will need to be registered.
Yeah, and just to know where that DSHS falls in, all of the CBD stores that you see that's there now will now have to be compliant and a licensee. And so there's going to be a very strict criteria to register for that. We're on time.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, team. Thank you, Prairie View. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you, Hannah and your team, for giving us really a very insightful presentation, understanding of what we are expecting to do and engage in here in the state of Texas. Next on our agenda is the USDA. Of course, we're going to have with us Mark Alford. He was with the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service. He's going to talk to us a little bit about some of the Farm Bill provisions, and then also following him is going to be, we have on your agenda Eddie Trevino, but he won't be here. He's actually sick. So we're going to have a replacement, which is going to be David Sullivan. He's going to replace him, but they'll come up. David is going to come behind Mark as soon as he's finished.
Good morning. Again, my name is Mark Alford. I'm representing the Natural Resources Conservation Service. We're a branch of USDA. I'll start out, we're not really part of the regulatory side of the agency. We mostly deal with private landowners, and we help them address resource concerns and issues like that, like soil erosion, water quality or quantity issues, stuff like that. So, we're really excited with this new Farm Bill. In the past, we have had very limited access to hemp producers, which on the first part of my presentation, I'll give a very brief kind of where the 2014 bill was as far as who we could work with, as far as the hemp regulations, and I'll go into 18 kind of what has changed. I'll briefly go into the application process. It's not our application process like was mentioned before. Texas was approved for, their plan was approved by the USDA, so they're developing the application process. In order to work with us, you have to have that license and you'll have to register with the Farm Service Agency. But so I'll start with, I'll go over the previous Farm Bill. You know, like I stated before, we didn't have a whole lot of, as an agency, contact with hemp producers because we were relegated to working with those private landowners that were working part of a pilot research with either an Institute of Higher Learning or the State Department of Agriculture. So that really limited our access to, hemp producers. With the 14, the Farm Bill did not allow for general commercial activity, and it did not remove industrial hemp from the controlled substance list. So, as I said, with the new Farm Bill, and they pass a new Farm Bill about every 5 years. Sometimes it can be delayed a little, but there was some exciting changes as far as hemp production, as far as I know from our standpoint as an agency, who we can now start working more to help hemp producers address their resource concerns as well. The definition in that Farm Bill of, and it's kind of been mentioned earlier, for industrial hemp is the plant cannabis sativa and any part of such plant, whether growing or not, with delta-non THC concentration of not more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis. Producers may be authorized to produce by a state or Indian tribe, which, and like I said, Texas has an approved plan now for domestic production of hemp. The address in that third bullet is kind of where you can see that approved plan. It largely resembles basically what was in the Farm Bill for hemp. Like they said earlier, they pretty much followed the federal regulation part of it. The producer must first obtain that license if you want to kind of contract, do a potential, even to get technical service with us, you need to get that license. I'm not going to, and you also will need to register with the Farm Service Agency. I'm not going to go too much into that part of it. We have a representative from that agency, which will be talking right after I get done, and they can kind of go more into detail of that. But basically, you'll go in with that license number, and you'll fill out some reporting data and various other eligibility documentation. Once you get that done, you're on your way to be able to kind of work with us. Like I said, we can give free technical assistance. If all you're looking for is technical assistance, we have agronomists, we have engineers, we have soil scientists, we have irrigation specialists. We have pretty much any type of specialist you'll need, from the resource standpoint of growing hemp. We're a very valuable agency, as far as information. And I'll get into later, we have some programs that will offer financial assistance as well to address any resource concern related issues that you may have. So to get that aforementioned license number, the producer must go through the Texas Department of Agriculture. I'll go over some of the highlights, but like I said, specific questions, you'll have to gear those to the Texas Department of Agriculture. The application itself, according to the website, said it would be out in early 2020. I think someone said it's going to be March, so you might want to start looking on that. But there is some information on their website, on the different processes and stuff like that. So I would encourage you to check that out. Like I stated before, the application is not yet available, but here are some key points from what I could tell from their plan. First, of course, you're going to have to fill out that application. You're going to need to have a legal description of each location where the applicant intends to cultivate or handle hemp, and the GPS coordinate for the parameter of each location. If the applicant is not the property owner, written consent from the landowner for the Texas Department of Agriculture, Department of Public Safety, and any other state or local law enforcement to enter the premises where hemp is cultivated or handled. There is an application fee. There was, in that plan, there was some listing of how much and stuff like that. I don't want to really go into that because it usually kind of changes from whenever it becomes finalized. So just know that there's some associated fees with that application process. And again, talk to someone from the Texas Department of Agriculture to get specifics on that. There are rules as to how you're going to have to take samples. Like it was mentioned before, you're going to have to test to make sure you're meeting that less than 0.3%. So there are certain rules on how to take those samples and what labs you can use for those samples. I can say, according to the plan, any sample test result with at least 95% confidence that the THC content of the sample exceeds the acceptable hemp level shall be conclusive evidence that one or more cannabis plants or plant products from that lot represented by the sample contain THC concentration in excess of that allowed. So if this occurs, they'll apparently allow for a retest that would have to be taken within 5 days of that first result. And you must send it to the same lab you used that had that failed test. And then the results of that retest is final. I'm sorry, who? Yes, as far as I know, yes, you can. Like I said, I'm not a representative of the Department of, but you can have multiple lots. You just need to have those. Like I said, when you go in for to get that license number, you need to go in with GPS coordinates of the parameters of where those lots are. So basically, I'll kind of get into kind of what we can do for the hemp producer. Once you've gone through that process, you've gotten a license, you've registered with FSA. We have, like I stated before, we have, if all you want is free technical assistance, we can provide that. And I'll get into a couple of our programs that I think could be useful to the hemp producer. The first one I'll kind of briefly go into is probably our biggest program, which is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or as we call it, the EQIP program. Essentially, and I'm sure some of y'all probably have worked with us through other agricultural means, and the exciting part is now the hemp producer, if they qualify, it's the same process. You're going to register with FSA. You're going to have some eligibility, paperwork to show control of land and AGI compliance and various forms like that. And with EQIP, what we will do is you will go to your local NRCS service station or field office, and they will work with you to develop a conservation plan. That plan is going to be based on your goals and identified resource concerns from that field visit when they go out there and kind of go over your property and what your concerns are and goals are. Once we ascertain that, we can, sorry, I keep forgetting to switch the slides, but we'll set up that plan, and that plan will involve practices that you agree to that will address whatever resource concern you came in. So let's say you had soil erosion issues, particularly after harvesting your crop. One practice that I think would be highly beneficial for the hemp producer is we offer, during that time that there's no crop on the field, we'll help you plant cover crops. For your main concern would be to address the soil erosion so that bare soil is not just blowing away or being washed away, but there's many other benefits as well as it gets some nutrients back into the soil and stuff like that. Like I said, we have a lot of practices that address a lot of different resource concerns. So the key is to go into the field office and get that conservation plan worked up with our field specialists. Okay. And the next program I'm going to briefly go into is what we call our Conservation Stewardship Program, or CSP. This is a little different from EQIP in that it essentially is a program that involves your past conservation and what you can do to enhance your conservation in the future. It's going to also address resource concerns like EQIP, but it's more geared towards not only addressing those resource concerns, but strengthening the kind of resource concerns that you've already addressed, and giving kind of a reward and incentive to maintain that previous conservation. One of the ways it's a little different from our EQIP program, where EQIP is pretty specific. You have this resource concern in this field, so we address that. CSP is something we take more on your whole agricultural operation. It's where EQIP was practices that were pretty specific, cover crops right here. Here's our standards and specs to do that and so forth. Whereas CSP, you can also do practices, but you're mostly doing things that we call enhancements, which is basically like we have one example of an enhancement that we have for CSP is the cover crop to reduce soil erosion enhancements. So it'll still be involved doing cover crops, but there's added specific requirements that goes beyond those kind of normal cover crops to better address or more effectively address the resource concerns that you would have. The other kind of major difference in that through CSP rather than EQIP is EQIP it can be a year contract. You go in, you install it, we check it out, it meets, we pay you, you're done. CSP is a 5-year contract where you're getting paid on an annual basis to, like I said, maintain your benchmark conditions and for those enhancements. And then, of course, and the other kind of difference is CSP, you have to in order to qualify, you have to meet certain stewardship conditions prior to the obligation of the contract and meet some at the end of the contract. So just like with EQIP, you know, I suggest you go into your field office, local field office, and work with our staff, and they can kind of guide you through the process. Those were just kind of two programs that I think kind of will be geared more towards the hemp producer, but we have other programs that, you know, feel free to come in to the field office, you know, talk with our staff, you know, tell them your goals, and we can work with you to get you that plan and move forward. So that's kind of the end of my presentation. I guess, I don't know if they want to start the FSA right now and then we do questions, or if, but I guess while I can. We don't have any acreage limitations to our programs. So yeah, you can be a huge and you can be very small. You just have to be registered with FSA, so you have to be deemed an agricultural producer. Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good. We're going to hold questions because I need for, they're in the same
Okay.
time slot, so we want to make sure he gets his presentation at the end. We want to make sure questions answered. Good job.
Okie dokie. All right, good morning. My name is David Sullivan. I'm the district director for Farm Service Agency. Actually, Waller County and Prairie View A&M is in my district. I supervise 10 offices in a district with a couple loan teams and some commodity programs. My Waller County jurisdiction for our office is in Harris County over in Cypress. Got my manager here. You need to visit with him. So I'm going to talk a little bit this morning about Farm Service Agency and what we believe our activity may be in hemp production. So Mark covered a lot of what the Farm Bill said, so I don't really want to go into that. I do want to emphasize, as Mark did, that we are not a regulatory agency. What Farm Service Agency does is we serve the farmers and ranchers and producers, agricultural partners in the state through efficient delivery of agricultural programs. So we have what we call our safety net programs, and I believe the speaker earlier referenced cotton and cotton subsidies. That's us. We provide that safety net for producers through loans, through subsidies, through base acre payments, through loan deficiency payments, which are world market price might go down. We've got an established price set by Congress. We do what we call a pot payment. We make some payments to producers when the prices go down too much. We also assist in disaster programs where Hurricane Harvey, we had emergency conservation where we helped individuals clear their land of debris, rebuild fences. We also have our conservation programs that we are partners with within RCS, our biggest one is CRP, where we take land out of production that's considered highly erodible and sensitive, and we make annual payments to that producer to keep it out of production and to put it back into a natural environment, natural native grass. We have some initiatives, Prairie Chicken Initiative, where we have areas that are dedicated to the preservation of the lesser prairie chicken and other wildlife. The other arm of our program, our agency is credit. Our credit started many years ago with an agency called Farmers Home Administration, Farmers Home, and combined with another agency, and we have Farm Service Agencies credit per arm, which like I said before, I have 2 farm loan teams that cover my district, but we have about 30 loan teams throughout the state. And we provide credit to producers who can't really get that private sector credit. Maybe they don't have a down payment. Maybe their cash flow meets the requirements of a traditional bank or farm credit system. And we focus a lot of our lending on beginning farmers, minority, women, ranchers, and farmers. We have the eligibility requirements for these are the same, but Congress allows us to dedicate a certain amount of funds in different pools to fund these type of operations when we have a beginning farmer, a veteran. We also have veteran programs, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. So for Texas, in our loan programs, we've done about $147 million this year in our guarantee. It's down a little bit. We've got real active for 3 or 4 years, but we're still very, very busy in our loan sector. We've done about $100 million so far in direct loans. And then our farm program payments, which I talked about, those safety net programs that we've done. So far, we've done about $1.2 billion this year. We've had a lot of activity in what we call the MFP program, which is the acronym. We call it for short the tariff program. It was basically a program to help producers who were affected by the tariff engagements with China, mainly with cotton, some of our grain crops, some of our livestock crops, where they had depressed prices due to markets being closed. We made some immediate payments to those producers to help out. And again, those are our disaster assistance program payments as well. And we're going to talk about one of those here shortly that we think might be applicable to hemp. As Mark said earlier, 2008 Farm Bill changed a lot for us on hemp. The Farm Bill is about every 5 years. We never really know exactly what the Farm Bill is going to look like until Congress finishes marketing it up. So 2008 had some significant changes. Sometimes our programs carry over. So a lot of times when they carry over with a few different regulations that Congress and the constituents have asked us to change, and so we do that. So most of our programs right now are authorized through 2023. Some of our mainstay programs are permanently authorized, but for the majority of our programs, we have to wait on that 5-year Farm Bill, mainly to know what the regulations are going to be and how much money has been dedicated to those programs. So as Ben said, and I'm not really going to get into it, we all recognize that there's a lot of guidelines being updated right now. FSA is one of those agencies that are updating some stuff. We've got interim rules out there already with respect to hemp and how that's going to be recognized as with FSA. But once we believe, and obviously for me, I can't necessarily go outside of what we know, which is very little at this point, that we believe that there's going to be a couple of programs that will be eligible or helpful to producers for hemp. And one of those is going to be farm loans, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. And the other is our non-insured crop disaster assistance programs, NAP for short. No, it's not good that you take a nap, but we offered NAP. NAP's going to be available where risk management will not offer crop insurance. Now, I have no idea whether crop insurance is thinking about offering a risk management policy. But in the general world where we have crops like wheat, corn, soybeans, there are crop insurance available. We will not offer NAP on those crops. Where NAP comes in available is that for crops like maybe fruits and vegetables in an area that doesn't grow a lot of fruits and vegetables, and so RMA doesn't make a presence there. So we'll talk about that here in just a second. Those are two programs that we think are going to be available for hemp producers. So in our loan programs, what we have various types of programs. It's going to depend really on what you want to do and what your goals are. We have a program that's been in place now for a couple farm bills. That's the microloan programs. And they're limited, obviously called micro. That means they're small. They are targeted for small operations. We have had anywhere from small 1-2 acre garden areas that were producing a specific crop, selling to a farmer's market, honey loans. And we do a lot of little. Again, there are small loans, less paperwork. Eligibility is a little less stringent, but the money is limited to $50,000 for an operating loan and $50,000 for an ownership loan. In this part of the world, $50,000 is not going to buy you a lot of land, but potentially, if you only need a couple acres, you could probably get by. Our other loan program, which is our main loan program for direct lending, and when I say direct lending, that means money coming directly out of the U.S. Treasury from Farm Service Agency to you. And that limit is $400,000, and that's an operating loan that will, for 1 year, might be buying fertilizer, seed, fuel. For 7 years, might be buying a tractor, a trailer, a truck, building a barn, that kind of thing. We have different terms. Interest rates are the same, but the terms may be different depending on what you're going to want to do. The ownership loan is $600,000. That's it's what it is. It's farm ownership. You're going to be buying land. We're going to be taking a secure position on that land up to 40 years is the maximum term. And so that limitation is $600,000. Our last loan program that we have is our guarantee program. A guarantee program, those of you who have done small business may be familiar with SBA. We're similar into SBA in that what we're going to do is you're actually going to go to a bank, a participating bank. That bank is going to be your lender. The bank's then going to come to us and say, I want a guarantee. And they're going to cover their risk. So they're going to say, okay, I'm going to take a chance on you. Your cash flow is not that great, or you don't have a down payment, but we're going to go to FSA. We're going to get up to a 90% guarantee on that. And what that guarantee does is it helps that bank mitigate their risk and allows you to get the credit. You are the bank's customer. The bank is our customer. We will never deal with you directly unless you don't pay it back, and then we'll deal with you directly. But for the most part, that the bank, and it offers you some convenience. Banks are allowed to do lines of credit up to 5 years. So you could do a $100,000 line of credit for 5 years. So every year you come in and renew, you've got a $100,000 line of credit. We will sign off on that. You don't have to do the application process. It's a smaller application process. So there's a lot of flexibility in the guarantee loan program. For the government, it's less money out. Guaranteed money costs us less. So we're able to do guarantees a lot more than we do direct because it's not direct money out of the Treasury. It's just an obligation. So, and it's different for that. So our loan programs are designed to help eligible family farms. We are not in the business of helping corporate farms. Now, that doesn't mean we won't make a loan to an LLC who's a one-member LLC or even a two-member limited partnership or even an S-corp. That's not what I'm saying is that we're not going to be lending money to someone where we're not the majority of their credit needs. If you've got a $10 million operation, we're not going to touch it because the percentage of money that we could loan you is so significantly small, you're beyond the family-sized farm. So what we're geared for is family farms. So, but what we're also geared to be is a temporary source of credit. We're going to push you to make your business better, make it grow, and then we're going to push you to commercial credit as soon as we can so that we can free up funds for someone else. As soon as you get to commercial credit, then if you want to go from a direct loan to a guaranteed loan and then to a private sector loan, that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to help you grow your business to the point where you're very successful, that you don't need government assistance at that point. Eligibility is generally the same for most of our loans. You got to be a citizen or a qualified alien. Family-sized farm. That changes depending on where you're located. A family-sized farm in West Texas may be different than a family-sized farm in East Texas. What's good in Iowa doesn't work in South Texas, so it depends. You can be a family-sized farm and own 2 acres of watermelons in South Texas. But you get 1,000 acres of watermelons, we might have to start talking. You may not be a family-sized farm. So it's depending on what you're doing and where you're located. So we're not going to, I can't give you a definition today other than what we want is family-sized farms. You got to have management ability. Got to know you know what you're doing. You got to be able to demonstrate you can't get credit elsewhere. We have various ways of showing that. And you got to have the legal capacity to incur a loan. Okay? If you can't sign a promissory note, we're not going to be able to help you out. You got to have credit history. Yes, we are the government. We are considered a temporary source of credit. We are considered a lender of first opportunity, but you got to have good credit. Can't be delinquent on a federal debt. We are a federal agency, and we're going to check that. If you're delinquent with the IRS or SBA or someone else, we're not going to loan you any money until you cure that delinquency. You cannot have been forgiven debt from our agency before. You should not be in crop insurance violations, and you should not have a conviction of controlled substance. I guess I kind of laugh at that one because that's changed now with the Farm Bill. Y'all laugh. I actually had to foreclose on a farm many years ago that actually got caught growing marijuana, and the federal marshals got after them, and so it was kind of different. So back then you couldn't do it, but now it's a little different. So that'll be a big change for us loan officers who are a little old hat at this. So we'll have to. That license is going to be very important. I can tell you. All right, farm loans. You got to have repayment ability. You got to have collateral. Now, in crop loans, we generally give you 100% based on the value of the crop. So if you come in and tell me you're planting 100 acres of corn, I'm going to give you what that value is based on market rate, and that's 100%. We'll do that. But if you're buying a real estate and you're buying 40 acres and you want to buy it for $400,000, it's got to appraise out at $400,000. Okay? Again, we're a temporary source of credit, and we're going to expect you to return to conventional credit sources. We do have, Congress in the past has put term limits on people. They can't just stay with us permanently. That's our goal, is to get you out. Now, that was on the loan side, what we have available, and what we think will be available. For hemp on the loan side, I can see us, if we do end up determining that loans can be available, I'll see us wanting that license, wanting a contract, because you're going to have to be able to show you got repayment ability, and you're legal and you're authorized to grow it. On the what we call the commodity side or the farm program side, what we believe could be available is our non-insured crop disaster assistance program. I can't say that fast. Sorry. Again, this NAP program is a risk management tool. It is designed to help you mitigate risk due to natural disasters. It is a lot like crop insurance, but it's not as broad as crop insurance. You have to have at least a 50% loss before we'll even start talking to you about making a payment on your loss. But it is available where crop insurance is not available. It's a permanent program. I talked about some programs are not permanent on the Farm Bill. This one has been for a while and is permanent. So it's always been authorized. Now, they changed the rules, obviously, but it's a permanently authorized program. Basic limitation is $125,000 per person. And a person doesn't mean you and someone else and someone else. There's a lot of rules to that. Person for us is by a different definition. But we won't get into that. We can talk to you about that individually when you come into our office. Or a legal entity with buy-up coverage is a separate $300,000. So we're not going to pay you any more than that. Buy-up? I'll get to that in just a second. Okay, so we do have some service fees for now. It's $325 per crop per county, $825 per producer per county, not to exceed $19.50. Fees have gone up a little bit from previous years, but it's really just an administrative fee. It's not even close to the cost of crop insurance, and premiums and other coverages. That's our basic fee. Buy-up is the ability to buy your coverage at a higher level of repayment due to losses. That premium, and it is a premium, can go up to $15,750, which subject. And if you have an entity, it could be subject to a 5.25% fee on top of that. Okay, but remember, for $15,750, you are buying coverage. So it's just like a house or a car. You can choose to, on a house, have personal liability for $100,000, but you say, no, I really want more than that. Okay, fine. You can get $200,000. It's going to cost you more. This is kind of what this is. So you can kind of think about it in that manner, is that you are buying coverage. No, not really, but you're buying a level of coverage, and I'll get that here in just this slide here will help you out a little bit on that. So, what buy-up will do is that we can go from higher levels of coverage from 50%, which you're basically saying 50% loss, up to 65 of expected production, or 50% production to 65% production in 5% increments at 100% of the market price. If you go basic NAP, you're going to have 50% loss, and then we're going to take your production, and then you're going to get a rate based off of the price. It's not 100% of the price. So the buy-up actually gives you some flexibility of potentially having more payout if you have a loss due to natural conditions, natural disaster. The coverage is available at 55% of the average market price for crop losses that exceed 50% of the expected production. Now, for hemp and crops that had not normally been produced, that's the challenge for you and a challenge for FSA to determine what is going to be that expected production. Don't know that yet, but that's the rules. So we'll develop an expected production. We will develop what's called an APH. Crop insurance will do the same thing. APH is your average production history, and that there's a series of calculations that we can do. But one of the things that we will have a challenge if NAP ends up becoming one of our programs that we offer is determining what that expected production is going to be, because that expected production will go into your policy, and that's what you will get paid on. So, for example, if you are a hay customer and you have traditionally gone 3 tons of hay per year per acre, and you've done that and you've established that history, that's what we're going to base your policy on. Okay? And if you have production less than 3 tons per acre, then you may trigger for coverage and a payment, depending on that. So the higher the production, the better the coverage. The chances of you having a crop loss and getting payment are higher. So establishing that will be something we'll have to do. On the fees, military veterans, and it's not military veteran farmers. It's not longtime farmers it's military veterans who are farming or ranchers are eligible for a fee waiver, as well as what we call underserved groups are also eligible for those waivers. Limited resource farmers are eligible for waivers. And so we will waive those fees if you qualify under one of those groups. You do have to sign a certification saying you are a member of that group, and you will bring that in when you apply. So what are some eligible causes of loss? Drought, wind, hail, freeze, earthquakes, natural disasters. Okay? Typical stuff here. Okay? As Mark pointed out more than once, you got to come into FSA possibly and do acreage reports. FSA is the acreage reporting arm for USDA. Now, an acreage report will be you're going to come in, you're going to identify your farm, you're going to bring in your documents saying you have risk in that land, whether you own it or you lease it. You're going to have to prove it, and we will be doing what we call acreage report. I do not know when the acreage reporting period is. Certain crops have certain acreage reporting times. We have spring seeded crops have acreage reporting times. We have summer seeded, other crops have other acreage reporting times. Generally, there's about 4 different reporting periods per year. And in Texas, because we're so large, we're certifying cotton in March when it's still freezing in the panhandle. So it just depends on where you're located, and we will give you those dates, and you have to have your acreage report filed by that date. There are what we call late file provisions, but you got to pay a fee, and we have to go out there and see the land to verify the crop actually existed. Some brief points on this acreage report. We're going to have fields, subfields where it's planted. We do recognize it's going to be called a lot. Its greenhouses are going to be included. You will have to report your greenhouses. You're going to have to identify what we call an intended use. And that intended use, it may be fiber, it may be processing, it may be for grain, it may be for seed. Grain, not in the sense of edible grain like we do with corn, but that's something we'll put a label on to know, so we know what it was meant for. Okay. And as I said before, and I opened up, we've got a lot of rules yet to make, but these are the programs we think will possibly be eligible and helpful to you guys. These programs are already available for crops, traditional crops. So if any of you have farming operations or are interested in getting into farming, this is not just because of hemp. We've had these available for many years. So if you do have a small agricultural operation already and looking for a source of credit or risk management, we've got NAP, we've got loans available. And so hopefully we'll have some more information for you guys down the road as this starts to increase in popularity and people start getting into production. So, sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Correct. Don't know. I don't know. NAP traditionally has been reserved for natural disasters. So, well, I don't know. I say financial disaster, obviously, for you. Yes, I get that. I do not know. I cannot answer that question. I do not know. But that is a very good point, and I understand your concern, but I don't know.
Just a,
Yes, I am.
I,
He can answer questions.
Yeah, I can answer.
hi, I just have one question regarding.
Dr. Bunch is hungry. He wants me to get through. No, I'm available for questions.
I've got a quick question. It's just regarding like, I have some relatives in Iowa, and recently they're being charged as marijuana growers because it was over 0.5. What are we going to be doing about that? Does NAP cover that?
No, I don't know.
Why?
I don't know.
Because
I'm not a regulatory.
Well,
again,
regulations in weather.
Remember, I'm not a regulation agency. So how that is regulated and classified under civil or criminal statutes, I don't know. So I do know that our loan programs, there is a eligibility requirement that you've not been convicted of a controlled substance. So but that's, you're going to have a conviction on that, and that happens. So I don't know.
I think to help address that as an insurance professional, what people have to understand, insurance is not to protect you from government agencies. It's to protect you from loss due to an unforeseen issue like crime, okay? But my question is circled around the NAP program. Now, if you are a farmer that qualifies for the whole revenue farm protection policy, can you still get NAP for your crops?
Traditionally, no.
Okay.
traditionally, the way the NAP statute is written is that if RMA crop insurance is available on a crop, NAP is not. So, because it is both programs, although they're not the same, they're similar, and the statute is specifically written that we will not double cover. It's either one or the other. So if the RMA is selling a policy and you can underwrite a policy through a local insurance agent, we will not cover it under NAP.
Okay, so you can't use WFRP and NAP
Together.
Together.
Yeah, if it's a sanctioned crop insurance policy under RMA and sold through a local agent, and you have cover, and the thing is that you need to check RMA's website. RMA will have what's called an actuary table,
Right.
and they'll tell you what crops they cover and what county is county specific. So if that is listed in the table as a covered commodity, corn, wheat, watermelons, whatever it may be, if it's actually listed in that county as a covered commodity, then the FSA will back off. You will not be getting NAP.
Okay.
Under
So-
the current rules.
Right. So the second part, the financing part, like my company also do capital financing. So when we look at the loans that are offered, are these simple interest loans? Or do you use factoring? What is the financing
No,
strategy?
we just charge simple interest. Our loans are about as simple as they get. Again, depending on what you want to borrow. If you want to borrow just operating expense, we're going to do a 1-year loan, maximum up to 18 months, depending on if you're doing starting up an enterprise. It's not uncommon for us to do an 18-month loan for like almonds or a crop that requires an extensive amount of time before it's eligible for production. We will do up to 18 months on an operating loan. But then traditionally, those are 1-year loans. Got to pay them back in 365. The 7-year loans are up to 7, or for hard capital like equipment, structures, that kind of thing. So, yeah. And it can be a mix of both. If you're going to do $100,000 worth of line of credit, $100,000 worth of equipment, it'll be 2 different loans because we'll be doing one with a 1-year note, one with a 7-year note.
On one of your slides, I would like for you to be a little bit more descriptive on, I believe it said various qualifications on for qualifying a loan. The one area over there, the one point where you suggested demonstrate management ability.
Correct.
I don't want to say that's a trick question, but exactly what is management ability from your perspective in these type of loans?
Well, that's a good question. And that's something that as a loan officer we'll have to determine. But generally what we want to know is, do you have any kind of experience in running an agricultural operation?
Okay.
And granted, some of you may be new to it, and that's going to be like maybe a group, maybe the group that was ahead of us has a educational program where you enroll and you get a certificate and you have been, you've gone through classes or something like that. That may be something we will consider. I mean, for someone traditionally comes in to me and says, I want a loan to plant 500 acres of cotton. I'm going to say, okay, what experience do you have? I have none. I have a problem with that because agricultural operations are extremely intense. You can lose your shirt in a matter of minutes, and we want to know that you have the ability to succeed. Because to be honest with you, if I make you a $100,000 loan, I want it back.
Right.
Okay.
And
so I need to know that you can do it. Now, how do we do it with hemp? I don't know. That's because it's a new enterprise. We will probably have to come up with thinking out of the box on what you can show us that you have management ability. And we do things like if someone has had a mentor. Or has been a farm operator or a ranch manager, and it maybe not necessarily didn't control the livestock, but help manage them, help manage the books, help make marketing decisions. All that has qualified. Right. So it's going to vary, honestly.
Right. I just noticed that in there because I think that's going to be problematic in a lot of arenas. You get somebody who's educated, done well from a business perspective, but when you jump over into the farm area, just like you just said, have you ever done this before? No.
Mhm.
So if you said no, that's a box checked already.
Maybe,
So then
maybe,
you
maybe
jump
not. Maybe not. It's going to depend, and I think we're going to learn as you guys will. I'm going to give. I've made very different loans over the course of my career. I've made honey loans. I've made loans on strawberries, loans on cotton. I almost made a shrimp loan one time. I really wish I had done that one because I wanted to try it out. But it just depends. It's just going to depend, and I can't really give you a definite yes or no on that. It's going to depend on you, what your background is, what you have to offer. The big thing is that we're going to want to know that you're going to be successful, and how you show that, we may have to have some latitude. I don't, we'll see.
Good morning. So my question is, you mentioned that you were a little bit of like the SBA,
Mhm.
and it kind of piggybacks
On
off
guarantees, we do, yeah.
it piggybacks off the last gentleman's question. So are you going to have funding that is earmarked also for marginalized groups, and by that I mean women,
Mhm.
people of color, and veterans?
Well, we have what we call different classifications where when Congress allocates our funds to us, they don't simply say, "Hey, you have $100 million to work with." They strictly say you have $100 million to loan to beginning farmers. That goes into a pool. It goes into a pot. They may say you have $50 million to make to veterans, and that goes into a pot. We have our traditional pots where Congress will say, "Hey, you have $100 million to work with." That is going to be lent to anyone who is not part of that pool. So if you're a beginning farmer, we're going to check a box that says you're a beginning farmer. Now, does that get you a better rate? No. Does that get you better terms? No. But what it does do is it gives us the ability to make sure you get funding. And that, because our funding is limited, there are times we have, in many years ago, we would run out halfway through the year, we would run out of money because, at that time, the agricultural market was depressed, credit was not available, we ran out of money. When it's in a dedicated pool like that, the chances of running out of money are less. Okay? So that's how that works.
We have a break coming up right after this. I'm going to give him a question. And so I have this tendency of making sure that I'm not responsible for your time. So he's going to ask me that question. And then
Well, didn't you? Yeah, I'm here. So, and I've got one of my loan officers here, can help you as well. She covers this area, so we're available.
And this probably is a question for her, but I do have a question. If we're a single member LLC and we're just getting into farming, but I have 4 local farms that all abut my property, where those farmers have been farming for over 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to come on and be part of my management team, would I be able to parlay the experience that they have to qualify as demonstrating my management ability?
Well, we're going to want to know what you did as part of that operation for over the last year or so. It could be that we say work with them for a year and come back and talk to us, because we're going to know what did you do, Yeah. Hey, I hauled hay since I was 7. I get it. But we'll be around. Dr. Bunch can find us. We'll hang out here for you for more questions. I'd be glad to answer any of them.
we have 1 minute remaining, and I'm not going to ask the question because it's going to take longer to answer that, but we're on break. So if you want to come and ask them a question, they say they're available, you can talk to them on your break, and we're going to actually reconvene at 11:30, and we'll begin. Thank you.